Chris, I just want to get a deal done at the fair market value of this domain name. Hey, Chris Zuiker with Media Options. We help companies to acquire the raw version of their brand, broke on some of the best domains on the planet. Check that out over at MediaOptions.com. Check out ChrisZuiker.com. Check out my podcast. I do that daily. And check out my YouTube channel because I'm going to do a YouTube video today on global positioning. So, gosh, I tell you, we get this conversation, this question a lot. It's like, Chris, what's the fair market value for this domain name? And it's typically of people that we're helping acquire the lower level domain names, okay? Usually in the higher level domain names, it's like, comes down to, hey, this is our budget, can we get it or can we not get it? But still, this question comes up all the time. Like, what's the value? Like, what is this domain name worth? Like, what's the appraised value of this domain name? Now, what I tell them is something that is kind of counterintuitive in one sense. It's like, hey, listen, the fair market value doesn't matter, right? Really, what the question is that what is going to take to get a deal done, okay? There's many times in domaining, especially, that the fair market value could be much higher than the offer that gets done just because someone needs liquidity, right? They're pivoting. They don't need it anymore. They don't want to wait 5-10 years to get the fair market value, right? There's other instances on the low end where, the fair market value may be zero, okay? Literally, the domain's worth nothing, or maybe it's worth $1,000. Okay, now that $1,000 on this low end is not because it's worth, not because it has value, but has value in the sense that you want it, right? And you create that value with your desire, okay? In this vision, what we call brand equity that you're going to pour into this domain name. So, if you remember my pyramid and how I look at the market, the bottom level of that pyramid is the lifestyle hobbyist, okay? It's the person that's just lifestyle. It's like the guy who rents surfboards at Waikiki Beach, and he's like, this is lifestyle, right? I'm just here if I can make money to kind of pay my rent. I've got a pension, and cool, make some for food, right? I might even have a website, but I don't need surf.com. It would be an overkill, right? I wouldn't be able to use it, okay? Then from there you go up to small business hobbyist, and then you go to small business, regional small business. You could say, hobbyist entrepreneur, right? It's something that, listen, it's never going to overtake the money that you're making in your job, but it's something that gives you pleasure, and you do it, okay? Most of the companies that are out there, most of the websites that are out there, that's what they are, right? They don't really make a lot of money. It's like blogs that are blogging, and maybe at some point it does turn into money. Okay, I'm digressing like way off here, but it's important to understand that when you look at most domain names and they sell in the $2,000 to $5,000 range, okay, you look at GoDaddy, and GoDaddy did, I think, a great video 2 years ago at NamesCon. Alvin Brown, he had it on his site. I got to see if I have it. I think we had it on Domain Sherpa, and it's on one of our videos, one of our YouTube channels. But I kind of laid out, hey, that's kind of the sweet spot for most domain names. Okay, it's that $2,000 to $5,000 range, and the reason is that it's just the perceived equity. There's no raw equity. And if you know my formula, remember, right? It's raw equity, brand equity, and perceived equity. There's no raw equity, no brand equity, and it's only your perceived equity. And the perceived equity of these people is like the threshold of the pain that they're willing to spend and invest is maybe $2,000 to $5,000. Okay, that's it. Okay, and so what happens is that the fair market value for these domain names is relatively nothing. And so to get a deal done, it really comes down to the what they want for the domain name, right? What is it going to take to get a deal done? Okay, not the fair market value. Now, what happens? Okay, I have a 5-step approach to acquiring a domain name. Okay, the third step is who is the owner? What's the owner type? Now, there's the business owner, there's an investor, and then there's the personal owner. And what happens is that most of the time these domains are owned by a personal owner. Okay, in this lower tier. As an investor is someone that woke up one day and they're like, hey, I want to do this project, and they buy the domain name. I have domains that I've done. Most of the investors have to have, we have a certain percentage of domains in our portfolio that we've done this with. Most people who reach out to me, they're like, hey, Chris, I've acquired maybe 30 to 50 domain names over the years on just ideas and businesses I thought were really cool, and I went on and bought it, but I haven't done anything with it, okay? And so what you have is I completely lost my train of thought here, but this thought that now if it's a good domain, what happens is that it defines that person. Okay, that person goes into they go into like a meeting, they go into the bar, they're like, hey, email me at thiscooldomain.com, and they've been using that for 20 years, and everyone's like, oh, that's so cool, how'd you get that, right? Because their assets, they're cool, and so what happens is that you almost have to pry this domain name away from them. And many times, I think that these owners, they pass on the best deal of their lifetime, the best deal that they could get for this asset, because in their mind, like, there's this massive perceived value, because it then becomes more than just what that domain is worth, okay, as an asset, or even like well beyond, let's say multiples beyond that, because that it's like, oh, this is me. Okay, it's a self-view as far as who you are. And so I talk a lot about global view and self-view, right? And, you have to get the global view to see they have the problem. You got to, the self-views, they have to believe in it. And so that's what happens a lot of times in these negotiations, is that the fair market value is nothing. But the perceived value of someone who owns these domain names is like everything. It like defines who they are. And so you have to pry that away from them. And so that becomes the essence of getting a deal done at this level many times. Okay, now if it's owned by a domain investor, it's a little different, because they're buying it for a return. So you kind of know, okay, listen, there's some kind of return in there. And as long as you can hit that rate, then boom, you got a deal, okay? Now, if it's a business type owner, once again, the fair market value is not as prevalent, because a lot of times they're just gonna hold out, okay? They're just gonna hold out because maybe their biggest thing they're worried about is risk, okay? And maybe there could be no risk, like many times there's no risk at all to selling that domain name, but they're holding it out because it's $10, and it's like, it's the person that's going to bring that up. I mean, they're probably they don't want to put their head up, right? They don't want to raise it to the management, because, like, why, right? I mean, it can only get them fired. It's not going to get them a promotion. That's a phenomenal deal, right? So many times they don't do that. Many times they don't have the vision to get that done, okay? And so there's all these different intricacies in a deal. And fair market value is very important. Explaining fair market value is important, because in one sense, it's like, what's it going to sell for, right? You have this asset, and this is what it's worth, okay? And so if you come to the table, and there's a domain name at the table, and there's cash at the table, and you're like, I want this domain name, even though you owned it, and even though you've owned it for 20 years, in essence, what you've done is you bought that domain name. You've taken that cash, and you said, hey, here's this cash that I could have used somewhere else in my life, in my business, maybe paying down debt, maybe hiring a new employee, maybe a new, going after new marketing, somewhere that you can deploy that capital better than you would if you had it in that domain name, okay? Anyways, okay, lots of thoughts here on fair market value, but I'll leave you with this, okay? It's many times it comes down to, what is it going to take to get a deal done, okay? The fair market value is one thing, but what's it going to take to get a deal done? And in the end, it's important. I would say this, okay? It is important for domain owners to understand what that value range is, because I do see a lot of owners that are like, I want $1 million, right, for their domain name, and it's like, listen, your domain name is worth maybe $15,000. Okay, that's the when you look at the equation of raw equity, brand equity, and perceived equity, it's worth $15,000. I mean, I can go out and I could easily, at $1 million, I have like all this other like selection and quality that's open to me, okay? The quality's open to me. And so if you overprice it, then basically what you do is you're pushing that buyer into a different league of domain names, and which just makes your domain name look ridiculous at that point, right? So if someone says, hey, it's $1 million, and it's this 3-word domain name, I'm like, well, listen, like for $1 million, I can get this. And so really it just looks ridiculous. You don't sell it, you end up sitting on it, and you pass on that sale. And in the end, it's about leverage. It's about your personal leverage, and how do you leverage all of your assets to make more money, okay? I can guarantee you, people who have money, it's about leverage, okay? About leverage, all of their assets. They don't sit back and say, well, I've got so much money, I don't need to do anything anymore. No. They're continually looking to leverage, make more money. Went super long. Hope you enjoyed this. Going over to chriszuiker.com, download my book, .com Strategies, check out my podcast, and share this up. You just got done listening to another episode of .com Strategies. Check us out online at chriszuiker.com and at mediaoptions.com.